If I die tomorrow, I hope you hear these words. I ain't here to flip no birds or sip no syrup. Hope the future generations can get this urge. Stay woke, youngin', and avenge these nerds.
Welcome to another episode of Nerds and Arounds, guys. This has been your boy Sebastian.
Boy Law.
And your boy Tone from across the hall.
And today we have a rock star, legend, and just an awesome individual who, when you get to meet her at cons, she's just, one of the dopest people that you can meet at cons. And she also kills it and everything with, again, with her art style and everything. I am proud to, get to know this woman. Got to interview her last year too for In Beyond Con, and she just whooped it with this Batman painting, which will be in the links in the description for you guys to check out. You definitely have to check out her Wednesday lives as well when she's just, again, busting out her skill. I want to give it up for the one, the only rock star, Tommy Castillo.
Hello, gentlemen. How are you guys?
We're good. We're good. So I want to look again. I'm happy to have you because I consider you friend, peer, but also too I geek out and fanboy of all your artwork and everything because again you're a phenomenal person. And I'm gonna skip the origin story question because a lot of the times I've known you've got those questions and everything. You have it on your site. And also too, we got to touch up on that last year, but I do want to touch up on the gaming. And pretty much when you started gaming around 16, and you tried to break into the field of gaming. So break it down. What was it like to decide to go into gaming, but then what made you change your path at that time? Give us a little bit about that.
So, I actually started gaming when I was a little kid. I was in first grade and I got the NES. And I walked home from school by myself. That's how I got it. And my first game for that was DuckTales. And it was hard as shit. And I couldn't I got past the first level and then that little brick level I couldn't pass. I think it was like the second level. But after that, I lost interest in it because I was doing sports. I was doing art, stuff like that. And then again, I picked it up. Actually when the PlayStation, the original PlayStation came out because of Final Fantasy VII. And that really got me into gaming, like hard into gaming, because I had played the first one, as much as you can when you're 10 years old with that super complex game and boring. But I played that as much as I could with other games similar. And then I was watching, I think I was in high school and I was watching commercials for Final Fantasy VII and it looked epic. And that was the first game I played since I was maybe, 10, if that. So I just fell in love with the storytelling of it. But I didn't know those games existed. And that's when the initial wave of anime and Japanese culture was coming in through sci-fi and MTV, and I had just fallen in love with the culture, that pop culture. It was so different, and from then on I picked up every game I possibly could that had interest to me. Metal Gear Solid, Tekken, just all of them that had some amazing style to it. And Soul Calibur, I got the Dreamcast, I had, I got the Sega Dreamcast, I still have it actually. I had the PlayStation 2, and so I thought I would love, because I loved playing them, I loved the puzzle solving, I loved the stories and the cinematics, I thought I would love making them. So the first school in the country that had a bachelor's degree in video game art and design was the Art Institutes. And it is going the direction in which you think it's going to go. And I went, and the degree was a jack of all trades degree. So I didn't just learn, I had 2 classes in programming, but I didn't just learn, how to make a video game. Because at that point, they kind of had no idea how to teach it. So I had tons of classes in film and film editing and cinematography, writing, storytelling, scripting, digital compositing, 2D animation, 3D modeling, texturing, how to make user interfaces, like how to design them, how the brain reacts to a user interface, how to typography to make the logos, graphic design to make the packaging. I literally learned at that point, and that was 2002 to 2003. So I learned literally every aspect of how to build a game, level design, puzzle solving, puzzle creation. And I was getting toward the end of the degree, and I realized that I didn't necessarily like sitting behind a computer 40 hours a week, 40 hours. And it literally, at that point, there were no Cintiqs. There were no fancy anythings. It was a mouse, and you click and dragged vertices for 40 hours in a dark room. And at the time, I was one of two women in a class of 30. And I didn't think anything of it. I was a tomboy, whatever. Then when I got into the industry, I think the main thing for me was, I was full of piss and vinegar, and I was a certain personality. And my crazy and asshole didn't match their crazy and asshole. And a part of that was sort of a misogyny that was in a male-dominated industry. And I didn't love it enough to deal with that. I was happy to have learned that I didn't love it because it's tedious. I spent 40 hours on a little tchotchke that you're going to see for, 2.5 milliseconds. Wow, what a week. And what I wanted to do, I wasn't doing because, one, I didn't want to pay my dues and go out drinking with the boys or, sleep my way through it or date whoever I needed to date to get to a design position. But the other part was that I didn't have the knowledge to do it. And I thought I did because I had come from this school that gave me a bachelor's degree and I had all this stuff and it meant exactly fuck all in the industry because it wasn't anything actionable. I had no real skills to show for it except clicking and dragging vertices. They made me a pixel monkey basically.
No, what's really interesting too is that, you talking about like all the shit you were dealing with in the game industry, that whole misogyny aspect of it, is that you were dealing with that back when it was kind of starting, because that shit's still going around with all what's going on with Blizzard and Activision, and you're just like, I'm miss me with all that bullshit, and you're kind of out of here. Because I kind of always wanted to get myself into the gaming industry, and what I found, kind of akin to what you're saying, is that it's a passion project. You do it for the passion. You're not doing it to make all the money just because of everything of the culture that's built around it. You're getting people that are like, you have people who have these memories from playing games, cherished memories, and like, I want to dedicate my life to it. And like, cool, we're going to hook, line, and sinker you because we're going to let you get the opportunity to do something that you associate to your childhood memories, and you're going to just love it, and you're going to do it, and you're not going to think anything better to want to go out and get more for yourself. Obviously, I think some studios do it a lot better than others, but it's been a thing I've noticed kind of watching the gaming industry on the outside and kind of just like what you're doing, just consuming products and just having fun with it.
Well, the good thing is that, back in the day, you had to be a studio artist. There was no such thing as a freelance artist when I got into the gaming industry in terms of video games. You had to be an in-house artist. Nowadays, you could freelance. I could throw my stuff out there and probably, if I put out interest, I probably would get a ton of freelance gigs. But your names don't get added in the credits because you're not a supervisor. And the whole dynamic of how they bring their employees in and stuff like that has changed quite a lot as well. But the other good thing is that, thanks to the internet and, things being so much more readily available, you don't need a studio to make a video game anymore. You can get you and a bunch of friends and get together and kickstart that and make your own indie game.
You're building a business. You've built it and you've continued to build this business, this empire. What is some of the adversity that you've had to get through in this industry, in this business pre-COVID, and now going through COVID, because we've had conversations, and you were saying in the green room how you're studying a lot more about business, something that artists don't learn and everything. What have you done to also help your business shift during COVID and continue that path to grow your business?
Let's see. Adversity in terms of pre-COVID is, I'm sort of a weird case when it comes to that, because nobody knew I was an artist before my husband died. And so they thought I was the booth babe and I just handled the business. And in reality, I was drawing and painting all along, which is fine. I mean, in the beginning, when Tommy and I first met, we really didn't let it out that I was an artist, because I was still training with him and I was learning the ropes of how to handle this business, and all the nonsense that artists don't want to deal with. I learned. And then when Tommy got sick, I was ghost painting. So I was completing his paintings, because he was too sick or he couldn't see, and I was still putting it out there as Tommy Castillo Studios. So he still touched every piece. He still, he did at least 50% of the pieces. Then after the fact, my biggest thing, which weirdly has changed over COVID, my biggest adversity before COVID was that people didn't believe that I did the artwork because it was not girly. I didn't draw like a girl or a woman or feminine. My personality is not a feminine personality, whatever, fits in the box of femininity. I'm a gearhead. I can curse and make, sailors blush. And I have a very, for lack of a better way to say it, I have a very masculine energy about me, which is very clear from the previous part of our interview. But when it came to art, I didn't draw like a girl. I wasn't trained to. Whatever came out, came out. And, it's all, brutal and, rage filled and strong and powerful. And that is not what people typically associate with a woman as an artist. They think more sensual, and they think more, elegant and flowery and gentle and pastels and butterflies and fucking rainbows and unicorns. And that's not me. Like, I draw Batman pummeling someone where the face is gone and there's gore on his hand. Like, that's what comes out. Or, an epic Greek goddess that looks like a woman, or, just not what people think I should cater to, and I don't cater. And so before, Tommy passed, my number one question was, oh, well, who's the artist? And I was like, my husband, Tommy. And they'd look at him, they'd look at the art and go, oh, okay. Now my number one question, or before COVID, my number one question was, did you draw all this? Like, they're confused. Like, not very girly. Or my favorite thing was that I would be painting and my assistant, who is a male, would be standing there, and he's 23, and he looked every bit of 23, and I'm literally painting something in front of them, and then they would look at me painting, then go to my assistant Connor and go, dude, your art's amazing. And he's like, I'm not the artist. And that happened a majority of the time. And it got to a point where I was getting really bitter and angry going to conventions, because I knew I had to deal with that shit all the time. And it was very frustrating. Then COVID hit. And I was a completely in-person business. My 5-year plan was to get me as an online business so I could lessen the amount of shows I was doing. So my 5-year plan turned into a 2.5-month plan.
I was going to say, by the way, your website name is awesome, because you're the only person that has the best website that I've come across.
CastilloStudios.ninja. I wanted something fun because, now I'm rebranding and it's no longer Tommy's company. It's no longer the Tommy and Sammy company. It's now the Sammy company. And I want you to look at the website and like, yep, badass. And that's it. Like, you have to look at the logo with my website and what you're going to get just from that.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's looking great. I mean, I saw the skull and it because looking up some of your stuff and listening to you speak, you always talked about how Tommy would have you just draw a bunch of skulls all the time. So it immediately made me draw to that. Is that kind of why you put the skull there, or is there a different reason for it?
Yeah, it kind of is. So the TC in the skull is actually Tommy's initials, and that is originally the company logo. When Tommy was alive, that was our company logo, the T and the C. And you've probably seen it tattooed on me because it is. But the reason I did the skull is because one, that's the first, for my students and Tommy's students, that's the first exercise. You draw 1,000 30-second timed single light source skulls, and you give it to me. And if you can do it, then awesome. And if you can't, then you can't hack it. I've done, I don't even know, like tens of thousands of skulls at this point. So that kind of was one. But the other thing was I wanted the logo to represent the company. And when you look at the skull, you're not getting frilly frou-frou art. You're getting, like, it's an art. It's got the ink splat with the drip and the Castillo. It's a logo. It's recognizable. It's a 3-color logo. And the skull stands out because here I am, this, petite blonde with big boobs that's kind of like a Muppet, and this is my logo. So it really, I wanted it to reflect my personality, not necessarily what I look like, because what I look like doesn't necessarily reflect my personality. And at the time, I was very angry because of Tommy. Whatever came out of me was brutal. Tommy had done a similar logo that, just like a sketch, and I ended up redrawing and fleshing out to the logo that you see right there. So I really wanted it to be eye-catching. And part of my 18 years of art was doing logos, and I wanted something that would smack you in the face. And you look at that and there's no way that doesn't smack you in the face.
I'm going to show off the logo right now for everyone to see. I'm going to apologize to our listeners, but those who are watching videos, that's the logo right there.
A question for you, Sammy, in regards to because I'm not an artist, I'm not a drawer. So is there a reason why Tommy did the skull thing, and why you're moving that forward is because the complexity of skulls, or working with a single light source, really kind of one of those things of like you're giving someone a task to do and it's to see their commitment?
It was all of those things. But mostly it was to show what kind of conviction the person had. It's not easy. It's quite hard to do it. And the way we teach, so when you're a student of the Castillo Studios, lineage, you don't just learn how to draw better. You learn to live an art life. And you learn because art is a part of you. On one hand, I might say, yeah, that painting behind me, that king tut behind me is just oil and fucking fabric, and who cares? If it goes up in flames, I'll just do another one. So there is a certain level of emotional disconnect as a professional artist, but you have to have that. You can't, I gotta wait for my inspiration. You can't have that, because as an illustrator, you need to be an artist on demand, but the other thing is that we also imbue that the art is you. I mean, if that goes up in flames, it'll suck, and that is a piece of me, but it is what it is. I'll just redo it, and I'll do it better because I did it before. But you have to have especially as an independent artist, you have to have a certain level of conviction. And one of the things we always said is you have to be an artist with courage, character, and conviction. And that 1,000 skull shows us the conviction of a person. Because if they can't do that, then they're not going to be able to hack anything else that comes after, because that's an easy task compared to what you learn after. I mean, I was dating Tommy, and he made me do an art test, and he was like, honey, you suck, and you gotta start from scratch. And I did, and I was doing 4 times the amount of work of anybody else, plus I was running the business, which is how I can, kind of jump out of the gate with the level of a 30-year veteran. But I busted my ass. They say it takes 10,000 hours to become a master at anything. I mean, over the last decade, I've probably put in 20 or 30,000 hours. I do hour and a half warm-ups. I do hour and a half cool downs, and they're all fundamentals. And that was the thing that I was lacking in my college days, of why I couldn't hack it as a designer, is because I had no real artistic fundamentals. Even though it was an art school, I had 2 life drawing classes out of 3 years, out of, 40, 50 credit hours, I had 2 life drawing classes. That's not teaching you fundamentals of art. And I learned everything that I use now artistically is stuff that I learned, through Tommy, and then after, in learning how to look at art and then understand how, Caravaggio did his lighting, looking up artists that I love, like, Jeffrey Jones, James Gurney, who's a master at lighting. And if you want to be an artist and you don't know who James Gurney is, then fucking look it up. N.C. Wyeth, Howard Pyle, all of these artists that my direct artistic lineage comes from. I learned how to observe through all of this so that I can learn, so that's how he did his shadowing. Oh. What I learned was not only, and what we teach is not only how to survive as an artist, but also how to continue your education and how to educate yourself by observing and learning from the masters. Learn from where the copycats got it from. So I would say my most favorite medium, because it allows me to slap my art dick on the table, and I am a bit of a narcissist and a show off, is watercolors. Is definitely watercolors, because watercolors, so in terms of, if you were to get a traditional fine art, and when I mean traditional fine art, I mean way back in the Renaissance, if you were to train with an artist, the first thing you learn how to do is draw, and the second thing you would learn is watercolors, because watercolors is the second hardest medium to learn. Because you have to understand how your pigment is built, to understand how it works, to understand how it's not just, I'm throwing some paint down, I can get myself up here. It's, you gotta learn lighting. You have to understand color. Okay, if I put red and green on top of each other and I do it wrong, you're gonna get brown. Okay, but if I do it right, then you're gonna get magic. It's understanding how the water mixes in. And what 99% of people who hate watercolors and can't deal with watercolors says is that it does its own thing. They can't control it. And I'm like, that's the best fucking part. You just slap that shit down and you let it, and that's it. Most notably, I use my watercolors on Gundams. Something that I want nitty gritty and brutal with rust and nastiness. And my Gundams are super organic because I use watercolor. Well, that, and I make them look really badass because I'm awesome. But, that whole rust texture and rust technique, you could pull up Burning Gundam or Tallgeese. I think Tallgeese would probably be a better one if you're going to pull one up. And this is why I also like working traditionally, is happy accidents. As soon as he pulls it up, I'll explain to you how it happened. But I am I have a nitty gritty in your face style. And for me, I could achieve that. I feel I achieved it the best. There it is. There you go. So originally that was just supposed to be a cool standing Gundam. but I was too impatient and I was doing the ground wash and the red leaked into the wet red of the boot, leaked into the wet of the ground, and it looked like a reflection. So it looked like a wet reflection, and I'm like, well, he's in the fucking rain now. So so now it was, Barbatos in the rain, but all of these, I'm pointing to my screen like you guys can see it, but all of, very Italian. So like so the sword, if you look at the sword, right? The sword was a wet on wet technique where I made it wet. I threw some color down and then I took another color and I slapped it in and let it do its thing. The same thing with the background. I mean, look at that. It looks like a cloudy sky. Why? Because I let the watercolor do whatever it was going to do because I understood my medium. I understood that, okay, well, when I put this particular pigment down over this pigment, there's a thing called granulation, and that's what creates that kind of double color effect. The heavier pigment sinks deeper into the paper and the lighter one sits on top. And so when you understand your medium, I mean, to any degree, I can make watercolors. That's how much I know watercolor. But that's how you learn to paint with it. In terms of my favorite, it's definitely watercolors because I don't want to control it. I want to lose control. I want to just slap some shit on there. Instant gratification. I don't want to wait for it to dry. You know why? Because I have a hairdryer and then I'm done. I want to be able to slap and have emotion in it and movement and texture. So in terms of what represents me as an artist the best, I think ink and watercolor, just like that Barbatos. However, in terms of my least favorite, ooh, that's a good question. Pastels. Pastels are my least favorite. Only because I